Joining us from Pittsburgh is Collin Clarke, a senior research fellow at the Soufan Center, New York-based research group. Hello to you, Collin. First of all, there are some questions about who's responsible for this attack. What do you make of ISIS-K's claim of responsibility? Is it credible?
Absolutely. I don't think we have reason to doubt the Islamic State Khorasan's claims here. Rarely does ISIS make a claim for an attack that they weren't behind. That, coupled with the warnings from U.S. intelligence and just the video of the attack, where we see all the hallmarks of a classic Islamic State attack, the tactics, techniques, and procedures. Clearly, these attackers were well trained. In all likelihood, this very, very much was an ISIS-K attack.
But perhaps one hallmark missing, though, the assailants were caught alive. Aren't they often prepared to take their own lives wearing suicide vests or something of the sort?
Often, but not always. In fact, if the plan was to conduct a follow-on attack, they would have attempted to stay alive here, even though they were ultimately apprehended by Russian security services.
Doing a series of attacks like we saw in Paris eight years back. Collin, do you expect a resurgence, more extremist activity to follow?
Absolutely. In fact, at the Soufan Center, we've been writing about this, we've been speaking about this, and warning about this. This is the latest in a steady uptick of Islamic State plots, many of which have been disrupted, but there have been successful attacks in Iran and Turkey this year alone, and several attempts or plots disrupted in Europe.
What does this say about the security and the intelligence in Russia that the U.S. caught wind of this a couple of weeks before it happened, and yet Vladimir Putin, recently reelected, didn't see it coming?
Yeah, it shows that U.S.-Russian relations are at a nadir. There's supposed to be a professionalism between intelligence services, and so one would think that the Russians would heed this warning and take it seriously. We don't know, and we likely never will, if the Russians merely dismissed this or if they, attempted to disrupt this plot and simply weren't able to. Right now, they're going to save face. You're going to see a lot of disinformation and obfuscation. But let it be known, the U.S. remains among the most professional intelligence services in the world, and under its duty to warn was simply carrying out that duty.
Yeah, and Putin's explanation, or at least his version of events, was that these assailants were headed towards Ukraine and that someone across the border was going to provide assistance to them fleeing. Is there any chance that that could have been possible?
I mean, look, anything's possible. I think it remains really unlikely. However, look, there's people that are doing mental gymnastics and bending over backwards to find an explanation for who's behind this attack. I'm always a big advocate of listening to the terrorists when they tell us what their targets are. And they've long talked about the Kremlin as a target, talking about the Russians spilling Muslim blood in Afghanistan, in Chechnya, in Syria. So, this is kind of a case of Occam's razor here. The simplest explanation is very much, the right one.
And so let's assume that this is the right version of events, that ISIS-K is responsible. The Kremlin's version of events, do you think the Russian people will buy it?
Look, the Russian people are constantly spoon-fed mis and disinformation, so it's hard for me to say what Russian people believe. But there's always going to be skeptics out there. Certainly in the United States, there's no shortage of conspiracy theorists blaming the CIA, blaming Israel, blaming all number of actors. But again, let's look at the data, let's look at the evidence, and we're likely going to see that all trails lead back to the Islamic State.
And in the aftermath of these attacks, do you think Putin and the Kremlin might crack down further or find a way to perhaps strengthen his grip on power?
Yeah, look, dictators always use events like this to consolidate power, and he very well could use this event to conscript more forces for his war in Ukraine. So, taking advantage of a terrible tragedy on Russian soil to further his illegal war of Ukraine, and again consolidate power within Russia proper.
All right, Collin. Thank you very much. Collin Clarke speaking to us from the Soufan Center. Thank you.
Thank you.